Well, hello, everybody. Pastor Steve here. Today in our devotion, we are in Psalm 17, the 17th chapter of Psalm. So go ahead and open your Bible there. In this chapter, David does something interesting. He invites God to judge him, to search him and evaluate his life and his heart, his lips. And he is confident, he trusts that God's evaluation is accurate, it's just, it's fair. And what strikes me as I read this chapter is how confident David was that his obedience to God and his righteous life would stand up well under God's evaluation, under God's judgment. For instance, let's start in verse 2. He says, "Let my judgment come forth from your presence." God, your judgment of me, my judgment by you, let it come forth from your presence. Let your eyes look with equity. God, when you look at me with fairness, with justice. You have tried my heart. You have visited me by night. You have tested me, and you find nothing. I have purposed that my mouth will not transgress. As for the deeds of men, by the word of your lips I have kept from the paths of the violent. I haven't gone along with those who were doing wrong, David says. My steps have held fast to your paths, God. My steps, my walk, my way of living has held firmly to your way, to your path. And my feet have not slipped. I've not slipped off that path, God. I have called upon you, for you will answer me, O God. Incline your ear to me, hear my speech. So here's a man who's got a lot of confidence that he's been living a righteous life. He doesn't claim perfection, but he does claim to be a man who's lived righteously. And he invites God to search him. Verse 15 of chapter 17. He says, "As for me, I shall behold your face." God, as for me, I will behold your face in righteousness. I will be satisfied with your likeness when I awake. A closeness to the Lord. So I read all that and I thought, wow. I know it's important for us to have God evaluate us. There have been times in my life I've prayed, God, search me. And I've given God at times in my life permission to do whatever he needed to do to keep me in his will. That if he saw me getting off track, even if I was not aware of it, for him to do something to get my attention. I've prayed those kind of prayers. I think that's at the heart of what David is doing here. God, search me. But he knows that he's in a good place in terms of his relationship with God. And when you read in Samuel in the Old Testament, all of that was true of David in the years he was running and hiding from King Saul, who was trying to kill him. But to some extent, things changed once David became king. 2 Samuel chapter 11, the terrible evil that David did with Bathsheba, and it can be debated whether it was simply adultery or did he, by virtue of his power, rape her, because the Hebrew word means to take. He took her, to seize her. In any case, what he did with Bathsheba was sinful and was evil, and then he plotted to have her husband Uriah murdered. And God later confronted David, and David was judged and punished severely by the Lord for the rest of his life because of that great evil that he did. And so when I was reading this and thinking about how confident David was, asking God, all right, God, search me, and that he was godly. But then after he became king, he was less godly. I mean, he had moments of righteousness as a king, but that's when he had his worst days, his worst sins, if you will. And it got me thinking. Some people draw close to God when they're going through hard times. And then when life gets easy and good, they begin taking God for granted and are not as committed. Other people are just the opposite. They are close to God when things are going good. Man, God's a blessing. But life gets hard, and they turn on God. So some find it easier to be faithful in good times, others easier to be faithful in hard times. I recognize that the temptations we face and the struggles we face differ when we're going through good times versus hard times. I recognize that. And some people have more struggle with the temptation toward bitterness and doubt and all of that when they're going through hard times, whereas others have more temptation with pleasure, materialism when they're going through good times. So the temptations, the struggles different. The goal is to be faithful to the Lord whether you're going through good times or hard times. Let's not be like David and be faithful when times are hard, but take God for granted when times are good. Or let's not be like others who are faithful to God and I seek God when times are hard, but then, when they get good, or what? Let's just choose to be faithful, every day, regardless of circumstance, good times, tough times. I think that brings a smile to the face of God. And I know that makes life better. And maybe all of us need to do what David did in the beginning of this psalm. God, we give you permission to search us, evaluate us, judge us, and show us. Maybe pray a prayer like I mentioned I've prayed at times in my life. God, do whatever you have to do to keep me in your will. And when I start going astray, God, get my attention. And I give you permission, God, to do what you have to, because for the rest of my days, my heart's desire is to walk with you and be faithful to you. Wouldn't that be a beautiful prayer? And even more so, a beautiful life. Hey, God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.